Hello everybody, Carol Garrison with Carol's Creative Escape. It is time for another Make It Monday. Today is Monday, November 6th, 2022. And I would like to thank everybody for taking some time out of their schedule. I recognize I'm just a little bit late tonight. Not sure why, just getting my Facebook up on my iPad over here so I can kind of see what's happening. Anyhow, the project I'm working on tonight, I have this idea in my head and it was just taking me a couple minutes to kind of work through the pieces, so I apologize for being just a few minutes late. Like I said, it's Monday, November 6th. Tomorrow is election day, so if you have it in you, get yourself out to vote tomorrow for sure. Doesn't matter which party, your vote is very important and you need to get out and speak your voice with that. I appreciate, again, like I said, everybody who's joining me tonight. I have been a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator for nearly 10 years. That anniversary will occur in early December next month. And I really love what I do. And most importantly, I like to share what I love with others out there and to help them find their creativity within themselves, because a lot of times we don't always believe that we can do it, and I like to be able to share that with people and show that you can actually be creative. So the card that I'm going to show you tonight, it's a layered card, actually not a fun fold, which is a change for me because it seems like I've been doing a lot of fun folds lately. Those are really my favorite of all cards to make, but this one is a layered card. The sample that I have to show you will show off some designer series paper. The one that we're going to make together tonight is not using designer series paper. So that's kind of a bit of a change up for me, because I've also been on a really trying to use up my designer series paper. I need to go through and look because I know I've got paper that came out of the July-December mini catalog that I need to make sure I use up before that catalog expires at the beginning of January. So anyhow, we will learn a couple ways to make some cards tonight. And then just a quick recap of the week. I had a pretty decent week. It was super busy at work, but it ended with, my hair looks funny tonight. It's bugging me. Look at that little, I don't know. Anyhow, we're just going to ignore that. I'm not going to be able to get away from it now, but I'm just going to ignore it. I was able to spend some time with Cece Friday afternoon, which was wonderful. She's nearly a year old. She'll be a year old in the middle of November, and she's pulling herself up and getting into everything, but darn it, she's the sweetest little thing ever, and she's still falling asleep in my arms, so that was a great way to end my Friday. Saturday, I did get to spend the day crafting with some new friends. Really went out of my comfort zone. My sister and I went to an all-day craft thing at a nearby hotel, and it really was a nice getaway, great way to be able to just spend the day crafting with a group of other women, and really appreciated being included in that group. Other than that, yard work, getting ready for winter. We're supposed to be in the 60s for a couple days, and then we're going to get really, really, really cold. And they're talking snowflakes by the end of the week going into the weekend. So who knows what's going to happen, but it's that mad rush of trying to get as many leaves up as we can. Anyway, enough about me and my world. Let's go ahead and get started with the card. I'm going to go ahead and flip my camera around. Apologize for some of the mess or the ceiling that you may see here in the process. Just a moment. Oops. I'm also going to make sure that my ringer is turned off so that we don't get any phone calls in the middle of our time here. Let me see how... Ooh, that's pretty good for centering. I didn't have to change anything. That doesn't happen very often. Wow. All right, I'm going to switch over, get a little bit more light on my work surface here, get rid of my other camera stand. I've had some people ask me what my recording setup is, and someday I'm going to have to set up a picture for you, but it isn't anything really fancy. Believe it or not, I used 2 old paper pumpkin boxes to create a stand. And then I have one of these, I don't know what kind of camera holder they're called, the octopus, I think, camera holder that I set up on that box and mount my camera in that. And when it's all done and I pull it out, I've just got a second stand that I put it into. Nothing very fancy, but it works for me. So let's go ahead and get started. There are a few layers to this card, so make sure you've got paper and pencil handy that you can write these measurements down. This is the card we're actually going to make, and I'm using the Abigail Rose suite of products. And that's where this designer series paper came from. And I actually used a blender pen. I haven't used one of these in quite a while. These have been around forever with Stampin' Up, and they're just called a blender pen. And they've got two ends to them. I think they're basically both the same size. But you can use this to pick up color. And I actually stamped these flowers using early espresso, and then I die cut them with the coordinating dies that go with that Abigail Rose suite of products. And then I just squeezed some ink into the lid of my Petal Pink and my Old Olive ink and dipped this pen in it, picked up color and colored it in. So I actually colored in the tulips and the leaves here, as well as this flower and these leaves using that technique. It does blur a little bit, as you can see on my early espresso here, because I'm using the same type of, I'm not using opposites to kind of push the color around. It's not too bad, and again, I don't personally mind that look, so just beware that if you do that, you may get a little bit of blurring of your ink. The designer series paper, it didn't blur at all, and that's because that's obviously printed into the paper. So anyhow, I've got actually a layer of early espresso, a layer of crumb cake, very vanilla, and then more very vanilla, the designer series paper, my cutout, and then on the inside I've just taken a strip of designer series paper to add a little light to that. And it was actually, this layout came from another demonstrator by the name of Anne Marie Heil. And I just really liked the layout, so I kind of took a twist and made it my own. You will see that I did, on this particular card, bring in that all over background die that just does the stitched leaves. It is called, I want to be able to tell you what it's called. And it's one I need to use more. It's the Stitched Greenery. And so it's just the one that does that gorgeous stitched leaf image into the paper. Okay? So we're going to make a snow themed one. It's not a holiday one. It's going to be a snow themed one. And I'm actually going to be using a couple of different techniques to color. I'm going to use my blending brushes to color, and then I have die cut snowflakes from the Twinkling Lights dies. That's this set. We've used this before for our Christmas tree, but instead I use this big snowflake, which has another snowflake on the inside to give you a little detail, and then I also use this snowflake. And then I took an embossing folder, and it is the Wintry 3D embossing folder that's on page 177 of the catalog. And this is a 3D one, so it includes both the snowflakes and the pine needles. And these were out in last year's catalog, so I suspect you'll be familiar with when you see them. I'm using the snowflake piece because I'm doing a snowflake themed card. So we're going to have just a couple different things going on here. Let's go ahead and get started. And I want to start first with the piece of paper that I embossed. Now these are mini, the smaller folders, which means a slightly larger piece of paper isn't always going to get covered up. I just played with it a little bit and kind of merged them together a little bit. I've got a slight line. I'm not worried about that because my layout will cover it up. So I'm not going to stress about that. And I am just going to go ahead. If you remember, I think it was last year or 2 years ago, we had a designer series paper that kind of had shades of blues and purples in it, and I'm going to sort of recreate that using my blending brushes. I actually had to wash one off, but that feels dry enough. I'm gonna risk it. So I'm gonna be using my Blushing Bride, Balmy Blue, and Highland Heather to create this. So I'm going to start with a Highland Heather, and I'm just going to rub a little bit off onto my paper, because then you don't get that dark swish kind of thing. And I'm just going to go in an all-over pattern. I really just want to pick up the color, but I don't want it to be a focal, if that makes sense. I just want the color to sort of be there. This is one of those cards I haven't actually made yet, but I have it in my head what I want it to look like, so I'm really hoping it comes out like my brain thinks it's going to. I know, probably not the smartest thing to do if I'm going live here, but what can I say? Alright, and then I'm going to cover up that just so I don't put my paper in there, and I'm going to come back and repeat the process with Balmy Blue. And again, I just want the color to be part of the card but not take over the card. You know how sometimes you get those blustery skies in the winter that are sort of that bluish purplish tone? I think in my head that's what I'm going after here. And then I'm just going to finish this off with a little bit of the Blushing Bride to sort of bring the colors together. And it really is just a little bit of the Blushing Bride. And that's all I'm going to do for coloring. Maybe I need a little bit more blue. That's why it's always good to go light at first, because you can always come back and add a little more color. It's harder to take color off. Alright, and I'm going to leave it at that. Move those brushes out of the way. And so this is going to actually be, instead of the designer series paper, I created my own fancy paper. And then I did die cut out of that kind of white sparkly paper that is available in the mini catalog. It's the oh, what's it called? It is the Glimmer 12x12 specialty paper that's in the July to December mini catalog, and it's the one that comes with kind of a dark green soft succulent color. And then this is it can lend itself to being either white or vanilla depending on your color background. It does look more vanilla next to the white, but I'm okay with that. And it also includes green glitter, which we've used as well. If you wanted to, you could even take these little brushes, and in fact we're going to, because I want to show you that you can do this. I am just going to take and lightly, very lightly, add a little bit of color to this white. And now it has a slight purple hue to it, especially if I hold it under the light here. And it still glitters and glimmers and shines, but it's not running into issues in terms of it looking too vanilla-y to be against white paper. So that's something that you can easily do. And again, with the blending brushes, you can get that really light color to it. These are a little harder because I'm also trying not to get ink all over my fingers. There we go. Oh, Loki, what are you eating? Did you just eat? Sorry, my dog is down here, and I had earlier cut these snowflakes out using vellum, and they fell to the ground, and I think he just ate the little snowflakes. Oh well. Is what it is, huh? I'm going to bring a little blue into this larger snowflake too. Okay. That is that. And then I need to do a little bit of cutting as we're working on this card today, so you're going to have to bear with me on that. Our measurements for this card that you need are, for the base, it's going to be a 5.5 by 8.5 inch base scored at 4 1/4. And then you're going to have a piece of, in my case, I'm using the Highland Heather, and then I've got a piece of Balmy Blue cardstock that measures 5 1/4 by 4. And then I have this piece of the basic white that we worked with, and this piece actually is going to create a narrower layer here, and it is 5 1/8 by 3 7/8. And then you're going to have another square of cardstock, and I'm actually going to go through and repeat my two colors of Balmy Blue and Basic White. Nope, Balmy Blue and the Highland Heather. Sorry about that. Simply because I want to keep carrying those colors through. And so my first one is going to be a 3 by 3 square. So I'll just set that up in my trimmer. Okay, and then the Balmy Blue layer will be 2 3/4 by 2 3/4. And for this card, because I want a slightly softer background, I am also adding a third layer of vellum. And that layer is going to measure, assuming I can find my vellum, I just had it, 2.5 by 2.5. And what that's going to do is just soften up. In fact, I'm going to make it 2 5/8. So I have just a little border. This is an optional layer. I've just decided to add it. Oh shoot, I shouldn't have done that. It was so close I should have just left it because I was right on the edge. Sometimes when you try to do just that little bitty amount, it kind of wrinkles the paper instead. Alright, so we're going to leave this one alone. And that just softens up the blue a little bit. And so when my snowflakes are sitting on top of this, it goes how it should. And then instead of putting the designer series paper on there, like I did with the first card, you remember I've got that strip of designer series paper. Instead, I'm going to use 2 strips of the glittered organdy ribbon. And that's just simply because I think this card needs that sparkle. And so I'm trying to show you a couple different ways to do things because maybe you don't have a lot of designer series paper. I hope I didn't just lose one of my snowflakes too. I think I might have. Oh well, we'll make it work. So to stick down the vellum paper, because I know I'm going to have snowflakes on it, I'm actually just going to put some adhesive right in the middle of my cardstock, because I will cover that up with my snowflake. So all I really need to do is just make sure this is going to be adhered to the center of my cardstock. And then we will follow through and add this layer to the Highland Heather layer. Like I said, this card I've had pictured in my head, so I didn't do a layout ahead of time, and that's why you're kind of seeing me jump just a teeny bit, but sometimes it's fun to see things come to life that you're envisioning, and hope that it turns out how your brain was picturing it. And so for this, I'm just going to wrap it around and adhere it to the tape that I put on the back. And I actually want to have 2 layers here so that it's kind of wide like a strip of designer series paper would be. So I want to make sure that it's snug up against my other layer. So I'm going to go ahead and adhere it on the back side and then flip it over. And as I'm running it across, that I'm still right next to the ribbon. I can tweak it just a little bit, but I think that's pretty good. So that just gives me, instead of the designer series paper, it gives me another look here on this card. Really going for kind of the frosty wintry look. And then we will take our adhesive and we're just going to add do as I say, which is a light, gentle touch with the check mark. Don't put lots of pressure down. And then we're going to create our blustery winter snowflake scene, and we'll adhere this to that balmy blue layer and get that centered. It's got just those narrow borders. And then we will take our piece of Highland Heather cardstock, a sticky chunk right there, and I'm going to fold that over on the score line and take my bone folder and then we're just going to center this layer on the front of our card. So I think you're starting to see how this card is going to look. Except the one thing I'm going to do, because I just noticed when I attached this, is remember how I said I used the embossing folder and ran through, so I kind of have, I can see where there's a line. I want to make sure I've got most of that covered up with my attachments. That line was going across the top, and I really want it on the bottom because I'm going to be better able to cover stuff up if I have it down low like that. But fortunately, I was still able to peel it off. All right, and then I'm going to stick this layer on. And actually, I don't want to be using that. I want to be using dimensionals, because I want this to pop up. And I'm just going to place that in the center of the card. And stick it down. And then that just leaves me with my snowflakes. Good, I found the other one. I thought the dog had eaten that one too. And I made 3 of them because I really wasn't sure how much I was going to want to put down. But I think I might just kind of throw one under here and one off to the side of my paper. And again, with this having all of these holes in there, I think you can see it better against here. I don't want to put a lot of adhesive and have it coming through the holes. And so I see a couple that didn't punch all the way out either. That's okay. I am just going to attach this using a dimensional. One word of caution that I will give you on this, I did find this is actually 2 dies stuck together to get this interior pattern. And I did find that these pieces of the larger snowflake became a little fragile when I did that. So just be careful when you're doing your own die cutting, if you've got that set of dies, that might be an issue. We're going to pop that one off to the side, and then this one I am just going to attach with regular adhesive, not popping it up. And then we'll throw this one on. We'll stick that there, and that just adds a little. It looks like when I attached my square, I may have pulled the ribbon just a teeny bit. All right, and then something else that this card needs, in addition to my sentiment, is I need to put on a little bit of more sparkle bling. And so let's just see. I'm thinking the iridescent pearls, because they're going to kind of pick up that pink and purple blue colors that I've added. And so let me grab my take your pick tool. Then we'll just add like that. Maybe I'll put one right in the center of my snowflake too. Okay, and then on the inside of this card, you have another piece of balmy blue that measures 4 by 5 1/4, and I am just using that for the inside of my card. And this one actually measures a little more than 4, it appears. Make sure this cut is right too. Okay, that one is right. I think I was cutting paper in half and not, still have that sticky spot of tape, so when I'm running my cardstock, I'm finding that. Anyhow, I'm using, instead of just basic white on the inside, I am using a piece of balmy blue, and I did decorate the edge of this a little bit with the snowflake embossing folder again. I'm not completely happy with how that looked. I like the look, I just don't like that strong crease that's right there from catching the edge of it. But chances are nobody but me will know that why it's there. They'll just think that it's part of the design, so I gotta let it go. But I'm okay using the balmy blue on the inside because it's light enough you can write on it. People are going to be able to see. And then on this card, I am actually opting not to put a sentiment on it. I did grab some different sentiments, and at first I was going to put the All is Merry and Bright, but I actually kind of like how this turned out with no words on it, and that gives me a little bit of flexibility on how I use the card and who gets it. So I am going to choose, whoops, I'm sorry, I don't have it in camera. I am going to choose to leave it with no sentiment on the outside of the card at all, just letting the snowflakes speak for themselves. So that is our Winter Wonderland card again. I recognize I was kind of jumping all over the board, so I'm going to repeat measurements for you, just so that you've got them. The base for the card is a 5 1/2 by 8 1/2 scored at 4 1/4. And then you have a layer of cardstock that is 5 1/4 by 4. And in this case, it's the crumb cake or the balmy blue. And then a layer of very vanilla basic white. You could even do designer series paper here if you wanted to. This layer is 5 1/8 by 3 7/8, and this one I ran through an embossing folder. This one I ran through the embossing folder, plus I used my blends to add some swirls of a wintry sky. And then there's a layer of designer series paper, which would be 1 1/8 by 5 1/8, or in this case I used ribbon instead. And then the base layer here, the Highland Heather or the Very Vanilla, that layer's 3 by 3. The Balmy Blue or designer series paper measures 2 3/4 by 2 3/4. And then because I wanted to soften that up, I did add that optional layer of vellum, and that was 2 5/8 by 2 5/8. And then you just need cardstock scrap for your sentiment if you're going to put one on there, or in my case for my snowflakes that I die cut out. And then on the inside you've got your 4 by 5 1/4 inch cardstock. And if you want to decorate it with the designer series paper, this strip is 3/4 of an inch by 4 inches. You can make that as wide or as narrow as you want it. And then just to get a slightly different look, I went ahead and used the embossing folder to get the stars in there. So as you're watching this, leave a comment. Let me know which card you like better, if it was the Abigail Rose card or the Snowflake Winter Wonderland card. Be curious to see what you think. This card actually came out pretty close to what was going in my head. Actually kind of surprised, but pleasantly pleased with that. Regardless, I like both of them because I think they're two very different cards. But let me know in the comments which one you like better. I hope you guys all have a great week. And again, thank you so much for tuning in. I really do appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to do that. If you know of others who might be interested in this card or this layout, please be sure to share the video. And I will get back with you guys all again next week for the next Make It Monday. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week. Make sure you go out and vote tomorrow. Bye-bye.